Welcome to this video on common research methods. In it, we're going to talk about the types of data, qualitative and quantitative, and then we're going to review some common methods used in the fields of research. But before we talk method, we have to talk about data. The goal of research is always to collect data. At first, you might think of that as facts and numbers, but data comes in many forms. To put it simply, data is really any type of information. When choosing a research method, you need to know what type of data you are looking for so that you can choose a method that best aligns to that outcome. There are two key types of data, qualitative and quantitative. Let's start by talking about what those two terms mean. Quantitative data is probably what you think of when you hear the word data. It means numbers and measurements. If a scientist, for example, is measuring plant growth, they are probably measuring in something like centimeters. This is quantifiable because it is a measure. In this case, the measure is centimeters. Another example would be measuring test scores in a class and determining or collecting the averages. The simplest way to remember quantitative data is that it's usually talking about quantities or numbers. Qualitative data, on the other hand, is a little bit more complicated because it refers to anything that's not quantifiable or measurable. Qualitative data reflects the quality of something, how someone feels, why something happened. An interview is a perfect example of qualitative data. The responses you will get typically will be more in-depth than numbers or yes or no. Qualitative is text versus quantitative's numbers. When you're looking at qualitative data, a lot of the time you're looking at the qualities or characteristics of something. There is a time and place for both types of data to be collected, as both have their pros and their cons. Here are the basics. Number one, depth. Qualitative data, like interview responses or text, are going to provide more depth than just numbers. For instance, in an interview, you can ask follow-up questions to clarify meaning. In a survey collecting quantitative data, this might not be possible. 2. Flexibility. Qualitative data is more flexible, meaning that you can collect a wider range of information. 3. Efficiency. Quantitative data is almost always more efficient. Using numeric data usually just needs mathematics for analysis. The same can't be said for something like interview questions. Number 4, subjectivity. Finally, qualitative data is highly subjective. Anytime you move away from concrete information like numbers, human perception comes into play. This can make it more difficult to remain an objective researcher. The type of data you collect relies entirely on the question you are asking. The only right or wrong in choosing a research method is making sure that your method fits the question or aligns. For instance, if you want to know how subjects feel about current political candidates, you can rely on quantitative data, but you would be limited in the type of questions you can ask. If you really want to know about their experience as American voters, it might be more appropriate to seek out qualitative data. Think carefully about your research question. What data will answer it? Once you know what data you want, you can determine an appropriate research method to collect it. Let's talk about 6 common methods and then 3 less common. Number 1, surveys. You have probably taken many surveys in your life. That's because surveys are a quick and easy method to collect data. You simply send a link. Surveys, when written well, can be utilized to collect quantitative or qualitative data. Number 2, experiments. Another common research method is to conduct an experiment using the scientific method. Identify variables to see how things interact. This method is generally used for quantitative data, like you've done in your science classes. Number 3, case study. Case studies take an in-depth look at a situation, person, or instance related to the research question. For instance, medical researchers might use the method if a patient or a group of patients is presenting highly unique symptoms. I have even had a student do a marketing case study for a school media program. Number 4, content analysis. Content analysis is using established content to determine new understandings. Now be careful. This can often be confused with secondary research or the type of research you may have done in other classes. It isn't about finding evidence to support claims. Instead, you are seeking out new knowledge in existing material. You go into the content to answer your own research question. Often these are qualitative, but it is possible for them to be quantitative as well. Number 5, interviews. Interviews are similar to surveys, but you typically do them in person or over the phone. We've talked a little bit about this method already, but it's asking questions and recording responses. Just like you see news anchors interview subjects, this method does the same. The subjects and questions just depend on your research question. Number 6, a correlation study. A correlation study examines how an A variable impacts a B variable. The methodology will often employ another method, and the data can often be a mix of qualitative and quantitative. Now let's talk about our 3 less common methods. Number 7, action research. Action research is research done through actions. It might be testing a new approach or implementing a new practice to research the impact. It's often something done by education researchers. This method also often seeks out both types of data. Number 8, mixed method. Mixed method is what it sounds like. It means combining multiple methods to get the data you need. Oftentimes, research falls into this category, especially if both quantitative and qualitative data is needed. Number 9, creation. Creation research is incredibly unique in that new understanding is found by creating something, like a performance, an artifact, or artwork. As you might assume, it is a research method commonly employed by fine arts, architecture, and design researchers. Here's the bottom line. Oftentimes, students and young researchers choose what they think is the easier method. But successful research is founded in what's called alignment. The priority has to be alignment over preference. This means determining the method that will best answer your research question, not thinking about which one's going to get the information faster.